The big paradigm shift in gaming, huge if accurate. I honestly look at this and I think to myself, does Asmongold even know what a paradigm shift is, honestly? Because he's very well known to use a lot of demi big words. And look at that, I used the word demi instead of semi just to confuse you. We're going wild here, boys. All bets off the table. But anyway, jokes aside, let's see what everyone's favorite hybrid between a cockroach and chicken has to say. And honestly, it's about gaming, so he's probably gonna be right. He's wrong about everything else, but on gaming, pretty decent.
Hi guys, it's me again, and today we're going to talk about everybody's favorite AAA gaming. We're going
He should really stop with the Jehovah Witness opening. Hi guys.
to look at where it's been, why it exists right now, and where I think it's going, which is going to be the majority of them into the garbage. I've said this before, that if you build 100 bridges and you suck one dick, you're not a bridge builder, you're a dick sucker. But if you suck 100 dicks and you only build one bridge, you're Ubisoft. And the problem now is that we've got a lot of companies like that, because they
Ubisoft, Bethesda, the list is pretty large there, honestly.
focus so much on trying to make these games and focusing on making them the most broad audience possible, making them have everything for everyone, that we get to a situation where one size fits none. And I think this has been an ongoing issue. It's been going on, I think, especially in the last like 10 years. I think COVID accelerated the goal with this because of how much more money gaming is making now. COVID was kind of like a multiplier effect on that. But it's been going on.
Completely disagree with that. Why would it be a magical multiplier effect? If they were gonna do it, they just did it and it happened. COVID had probably nothing to do with it.
For a while, and I want to explain kind of like where AAA gaming came from, because back in the day we're talking about the 90s, even the 80s, right, with arcades and the original consoles. But the 90s and the 2000s and a little bit into the 2010s, right, and not all the way, as we all know, is that AAA gaming was a stamp of approval, a seal of quality. And it's funny now because it's almost the opposite. It's like, well, this is a AAA game, it's coming from this big studio, so we know that it's going to have a number of annoying features. There's probably going to be
A lot of folk shit, probably, yeah. But at the start of gaming, like in the 90s, were triple A studios even a thing? Honestly, I don't remember. No one referred to anything as a triple A development at that time. It was just, wow, this big game, typically GTA, or sometimes Halo.
you buy the game on Steam and then you have to log on to their additional launcher in order to actually play it. All of these very, very annoying things. And at the end of the
True.
day, I think a lot of people don't enjoy that. And the other big issue that AAA gaming has is that basically a lot of studios, and I think companies are doing this in general, this is something I think that we're also seeing in movies as well, where you're seeing these movies that are being made with these gigantic budgets, like everything is CGI, there's like all these A-list actors in it.
Bad CGI, that's the best part.
And like the movie has a budget of like over $100 million, maybe, or something like that. I don't know really what average movie
Everything. Gaming and movies are pretty much the same budget. Pretty much nothing is going to be below 200 million. And the high end is roughly 400 to 450 tops million in budgetary allocation. But, it can also go higher. That does not involve marketing and things like that.
budgets are, but it's probably even more than that in some cases. And then it makes back like a fraction of that money. And the reason what that does is it
No, 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 no. It makes back a fraction of that money. And the studio touts, oh my god, such a success. Also, we own the chuds. 10 out of 10 would do again. And then you get sold for parts. Because, as we predicted months ago at this point, because, budgeting, finance, all of that stuff, I really like it. Ubisoft, now, pretty much every analyst is predicting that Ubisoft is going to be sold for spare parts, for example, in 2025. Because, again, Ubisoft currently has lost probably roughly near 1.2 billion this year. And that does not count for Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is going to be most likely their most expensive game that probably reaches up, easily upwards of 350 million in production costs. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Makes it to where
And needless to say, Assassin's Creed Shadows is not going to sell probably even 3 million copies.
every single movie has to be Spider-Man. Every single movie has to be attached to an IP that can be attached to a line of toys that can be sold to kids. And so now you don't get as many movies that take risks as much because those risks cost more money and it's harder to recoup the money back from the risks because you've lost the market of DVDs. And
you see, when he talks about games, agreeable. But this is complete fucking stupidity. No. When we're talking about movies, they do not take risks because of one simple reason. It's not that the risks cost money. A risk can cost actually less than 100 million to make. But it's a risk on paper, not actual money that we are talking about when it comes to movies, why they're all attached to big IPs. And that reason is simple. You can make something new, and this, by the way, intersects with gaming. You can make something new, and it can cost like 200 million. But something new has no guaranteed sales history, so it's harder to sell to investors. Typically, you don't have to sell that, by the way, to investors. Just saying as a poor example here. You need to sell that as a selling point to the banks that you are going to take the loan from, and things like that. And something that does not have a guaranteed return and has a chance to flop, effectively selling 0 copies, is a huge risk. That's why everything is attached to IP, because being attached to IP means that you guarantee that it already exists. An audience. And yes, this logic is technically flawed, but this is the logic that they use.
And so this has been going on now for quite a while with movies, and I think video games now are starting to copy the trend. And what you're seeing now is that everything is two. Everything is the next one of something that already previously existed. And of course, I mean, I say this, and if you guys can see what I'm...
Yeah, true. But in video games, this happened because there were a bunch of beloved video game franchises, and they were doing good. And then the studios decided to make something completely new, something completely bad, by the way, in general. It has nothing to do with who asked for this, even. They just made bad shit, didn't sell, and then they got fearful because they decided as idiots that gamers don't actually want new things. They just want a repeat of the old thing. And that is true to a degree, but we do want new things as long as they're good. But they failed on the delivering good part. So now they're afraid to make anything new because their history shows failure after failure when making something new.
I'm playing Path of Exile too. Okay, so I'm not going to talk too much about that, but that is kind of what my point is that I think that studios like Grinding Gear Games, studios like Warhorse that are making Kingdom Come Deliverance, and other studios that are the more AA like quality studios, I think that the real future is going to be those studios making the AAA games. It's like instead of a AAA publisher or a AAA developer making multiple AAA games, it's going to be one AA publisher, one AA studio making one AAA game. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot more. And I think that whenever you really look at, because like especially live service games, you have to have such a finger on the pulse of the actual community of the game. You have to have everybody that's working there really understand it. I think that's what Blizzard had back in the 2000s.
Okay, well, if a AA studio makes a game and it sells really, really well, like a couple of million copies, it kind of does become a AAA studio by default. I mean, no indie developer is making a game and hoping, oh boy, I hope this doesn't sell well so I can continue being an indie developer.
thousands with Warcraft. And if you look at any of the most popular video game franchises, and you look at the people that make the people that make the games are usually very good at those games. For example, like the Final Fantasy 16 guy that went and one shot the boss in front of a big audience before the game came out. That was really cool, and it showed that, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. He actually knows how to play his own game, which in some cases,
That's mostly not true.
Diablo 4, turned out to not necessarily be the case. And so, anyway, what I think.
Remember those two lesbians playing Diablo 4? And they needed to play the game while talking about the level design. And they ended up not talking about level design at all, and they literally talked about how great it is to be lesbians. And about how their lesbian lives are great. And they got given fresh level 50 characters, and they were on world tier 1, and they were only using basic attacks, and sometimes when they clicked something else and a skill popped off, you could visibly see that they were spooked because they did not know what's happening. Ah, man, that was pure gold.
I think has happened is that you've seen these studios like Ubisoft. I think Ubisoft is it's the worst offender, where they're spending $100 million on a game and they're expecting a 20% return. Because would you rather have 20% on $10 million or 20% on $100 million, right? And so that's the logic that they use, that they're going to just spend more money so they can multiply the largest amount of money possible. And I think that
not true. Holy shit, he's not actually talking about games, he's talking about business. Oh boy. And I actually expected to agree with Asmongold on this video, but here we are once again.
what's happening now is that is true, but it's also that you double down on a loss when it's not. And I think that's really the situation that we're seeing a lot of these studios run into when they release a game that's effectively a dud. And I think the reason why these games are getting released and they're trash is because consumer interests are changing so much faster than they used to. So think about it like
that is flat out inaccurate and a lie. A consumer interest in this situation changing would be people saying, "Oh, we don't want a Dragon Age game that's a Dragon Age game. We want Dragon Age Veilguard." But that did not happen. People looked at Veilguard and said, "No, fuck this. We want a Dragon Age game, not whatever goddamn Skinwalker shit is this." Okay? So, no, this is completely false.
this. There are a lot of games that are in development for, I don't know, like 6 years, for example. 6 years or 4 years in development is very, very common. Think about how...
Actually, it's kind of becoming common-ish now, because every game previously in the past, like, 5 years that got released was in development for effectively something like 8 years. And now we're having a bunch of releases that are saying, "Oh, we made this in 5 or 6 years," which is a huge shift, though.
How much different things were 4 years ago. Well, 4 years ago, we had COVID. Everything was totally different. People were addicted to Genshin Impact, and everybody was spending all day on the internet. Well, you can't necessarily develop a game around...
Ah, the good old days when we farmed Asmongold, because roughly a year and a half ago, he was in his White Knight phase, which, by the way, people just literally choose to forget. Every video he did, he just... If there's a woman that exists out there, he's gonna White Knight the shit out of her. He unironically, multiple times, said in that golden period of farming Asmongold, anything bad you say about women is sexist. Unless he does it. He has the ability to say bad things about women, and it's not sexist. But anyone else who says anything, even remotely negative about women, is automatically sexist. Yes. People just choose to forget this for some reason, that he literally did that like a year and a half ago. Ah, the good old times.
Around that, that context. And 6 years ago, if you started making a game, well, if you just got inspired by Fortnite, man, you're a little bit late now, aren't you? And so what we're seeing now is that...
No, you're not late at all, in fact. Fortnite is still massive. Marvel Rivals came out. Overwatch, even past its glory days, still massive. And these games are still successful. There's no such thing as you're gonna miss the trend. As long as you the PUBG did not become one of the most popular games ever just because it randomly hit a genre that people like. No, it was a good game to begin with, and guess what? After that, there came games that did the PUBG thing, and they did it better. There's no such thing as being late to the party in this sense, because games live and die by how good they are, and that's it.
We're seeing smaller studios, these AA studios. I think the best example of this too that you can use besides grinding gear games is Larian, who made Baldur's Gate 3. Is that Baldur's Gate
I'm pretty sure Larian now is considered a AAA developer.
3 took an incredibly long time to make, but it didn't follow any trends because it didn't need to. There were no like
Actually, it did follow a trend because the genre that Baldur's Gate 3 was made in was already existed. It did follow a trend. It just executed extremely well on what it did.
outside pressures, outside investors. Being a publicly traded company was not causing them to have to, monetize the game in a way that was annoying. It was just them making a good game and then delivering it to players. And I think AAA game studios have, instead of becoming, too big to fail, they've become too big to succeed. And I've said this before, and I think that it becomes increasingly more true every year. And you're seeing these massive studios laying off. Like, I didn't even know this. Ubisoft has 20,000 employees. How do you do that?
Yeah, that is actually insane. That's true. That is true. What the fuck do 20k people do at Ubisoft? No. Probably like 3/4 of them are HR and the diversity divisions at this point.
There are so many people that work probably at these studios that have jobs that are, not particularly like super involved with like the actual creation of the product. And I think that's very obvious considering that they fire bunches of people and the products keep being made. So the issue is that you have a massive overstaffing, and then you have massive budgets, and then you have massive expectations and a priority system that's created by people who don't actually have the player's interests in mind. And what I'm saying by that is, I think a good example of this is if you look at a lot of the, like video games that have like actors in them. Like I think Senua's Saga 2 is a really great example of a game that is made for an audience of gamers that doesn't really exist. So obviously the game was popular for some people, and there were a good number of people that bought and played the game.
To be completely fair, yeah, Senua's Saga is most likely going to be woke shit. People understand that. But the fact that the actor, the person that is the character was modeled by, is an insane lunatic feminist, effectively, doesn't necessarily mean that the game is going to be bad. But we all know it's going to probably be bad because you don't pick an actor like this unless you have a message to tell. Okay? All of these things don't happen unless you are in a specific mindset.
Game, but the reality is that it really wasn't that big and they probably didn't recoup their costs. And what happens is that games journalists and games media, and I think just the games industry itself, likes to gas itself up about these types of games, but I don't actually think that these are the types of things that players are actually looking for. And I think that's reflected in the sales, and this happens over and over and over. People play video games because they like playing video games. While there are exceptions, they are very few and far between. And so what's happened is that these studios have convinced themselves they need to do all these things that players don't really care about, and they do them at the expense of the things that players do really care about, which is replayability, actual play, like playing like the experience you have playing the game in the minute-to-minute basis. And I think that really another great example of this, I've been playing on top of like Path of Exile 2, I've also been playing off-stream Stalker 2. And holy shit, that game is great. And it's made by, again, a AA, a smaller studio, but they've come together to really make an incredible game. And I think having a, like a focus, I remember, there was like a really good metaphor that like in Game of Thrones, King Robert was like, what's stronger, 5 armies or 1 army? you know? And like really, it's the one army that's a lot stronger. And I think that's what we're starting to see a lot more with these games. Is you're seeing these studios that are focusing entirely on making one defined product for a defined audience that they have a finger on the pulse of, and they're able to deliver a product to them that meets their needs and exceeds them in a lot of cases.
This is all bullshit, honestly. This is all complete fucking This is, yeah, this is complete bullshit. These AAA developers have no problem making good games. But they're not making games, they're making political statements, messages, and they just wanna lay it out how the life should be, what you should be thinking, and how better they are in general than you dirty swine of a normal person. Because you are not constantly thinking about wokeness and the injustices of the world, okay? You probably cheer for the lithium battery mining. Same as me, by the way. Fuck those kids. In any case, yeah. AAA games can keep making 5 fucking different games a year if they want. If they just stop being woke, if they stop sending political messages and actually make games for the sake of making games, they're gonna succeed. It doesn't matter if you make one or if you make 10. As long as it's not like one person making the 10 games at the same time, and the workload is evenly distributed and whatnot, and they don't ruin each other, you're gonna be fine making 10 games if you can. He's effectively trying to say here that upscaling doesn't exist and it doesn't work. Upscaling does exist, it does work, it has worked all this time. It stops working when you do fucking Vogue bullshit, though. And that's pretty much it. Anyway, I'm getting tired of you, Asmongold. You look like a chicken. And a balding pigeon. What the fuck? Buy a hair transplant. Anyway, have a nice day. Bye-bye.